The Mitsubishi Zero was the finest carrier fighter in the world in 1941. 12-to-1 kill ratio at Pearl Harbor. 15-to-1 over the Philippines. It could outturn anything, outclimb the competition, and fly 2,000 miles on internal fuel. Japan built 10,939 Zeros. By war's end, 10,370 were destroyed, along with every trained pilot Japan had. The Zero's superiority created the complacency that killed Japan's entire aviation corps. Let me show you the mathematics of how the best fighter became a crematorium for its own pilots. Here's the brutal mathematics. Training a Japanese naval pilot in 1941 required 800 hours flight time over 24 months. By 1943, 300 hours. By 1945, 40 hours. The Zero's early dominance convinced Japan they didn't need quantity, just quality. While they trained dozens, America trained thousands. Japan started the war with 3,500 carrier pilots. They lost 700 at Midway and Guadalcanal. The replacement rate, 300 per year. The loss rate, 2,000 per year. The mathematics of extinction. But here's what nobody talks about: the Zero's fatal efficiency. It achieved its performance by deleting armor and self-sealing fuel tanks. Weight saved 800 pounds. Life expectancy once hit 12 seconds. American pilots called them flying Zippos. One tracer bullet meant death. The mathematics. Japan traded pilot survivability for aircraft performance. A 10% performance advantage cost 90% pilot mortality when hit. The training death spiral accelerated after Midway. Veteran instructors were recalled to combat units. Novices trained novices. Training accidents killed more pilots than Americans did in early 1943. A captured Japanese training manual showed the desperation. Minimum landing practice due to fuel shortage. Combat maneuvers reduced to preserve aircraft. They were sending pilots into combat who'd never practiced combat. The Zero required expert handling. Novices couldn't even fly it properly, let alone fight in it. Now, let's examine the mathematics of veteran loss. The Pearl Harbor Strike Force had pilots averaging 800 hours experience. By Philippine Sea in June 1944, Japanese pilots averaged 100 hours. American pilots, 600 hours. The result? 346 Japanese aircraft lost versus 30 American. Kill ratio reversed from 12-to-1 to 11-to-1 against Japan. The Marianas turkey shoot. Japanese pilots were literally targets for practice. Saburo Sakai, Japan's greatest surviving ace, testified, "The Zero made us arrogant. We thought pilot skill mattered more than numbers." By 1943, our veterans were dead. Boys with 40 hours tried to fight Americans with 500 hours. It was murder. The Zero needed an artist. We were sending children to die in an unforgiving aircraft. The fuel consumption paradox destroyed training further. The Zero's range came from lean fuel mixture techniques requiring expert skill. Novice pilots couldn't manage it. They ran out of fuel or destroyed engines running too lean. Training flights were shortened to save fuel. Combat radius decreased because inexperienced pilots burned 40% more fuel. The Zero's greatest advantage, range, became useless with untrained pilots. But perhaps the most damning statistic: pilot production versus aircraft production. Japan built 10,900 Zeros, but trained only 18,000 pilots total. All aircraft types, during the entire war. America trained 190,000 pilots. The ratio? 10-to-1. But here's the darker math. Japan allocated their best pilots to Zeros. When those pilots died, The expertise died forever. No rotation home, no training assignments. Fly until you die. The Zero consumed Japan's best. The kamikaze equation reveals the final desperation. By October 1944, Japan realized conventional tactics meant certain death with no result. Kamikaze attacks achieved a 20% hit rate versus 2% for conventional attacks. The mathematics made sense. If you're going to die anyway, guarantee a hit. 2,400 Zeros became kamikazes. They were easier to fly on one-way missions than to fight and return. The final, darkest truth? In August 1945, Japan had 6,000 aircraft ready for kamikaze attacks, but only 200 trained pilots for conventional operations. The Zero had consumed an entire generation. Training schools closed in March 1945. No fuel, no instructors, no point. They were manufacturing aircraft for pilots who didn't exist. The math is undeniable. The Zero's excellence created strategic blindness. Its early superiority convinced Japan that quality beat quantity. They built a plane requiring artist pilots, then killed all their artists. 10,370 Zeros destroyed. Approximately 25,000 Japanese pilots dead, all types. But the Zero pilots were the elite who died first and fastest. America lost 921 pilots in the Pacific. 27 Japanese pilots died for every American. The Zero didn't just fail to protect them, its lack of armor guaranteed their deaths. The finest fighter of 1941 became a mass grave by 1945.